am right-handed. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardha Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Astottara Sarshi Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopakabanath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki. Shri Mayapura Navadvip Dham ki. Shri Purushottam Chitra ki. Shri Ganga Maya ki jai. Shri Jamuna Maya ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. Harinam Sankirtana ki jai. Grantara Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pistaya Badalaya Smari Parijampa Pirita Namalaya Namo Meshwaraya Krishna Pistaya Badalaya Smari Bhaktivedanta Swami Namalaya Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gaurava Vijayana Nivasesha Sunyavari Paschat Satarane. 575, isn't it? 575, 575. The activities of King Bharata. Oh, this is early. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 5. What is Canto 5? The creative impetus. Chapter. What does it say? 7. Chapter 7, is it? Ooh. The activities of King Bharata. Five, 7, 5. Here we go. Ijecha Bhagavantam, Bhagavantam, Jagya Kratu Rupam, Kratubhir Uchavachai, Swadaya, Hrit Agnihotra Darsha Purnamasa, Chataраmasya Pasu, Somanam, Prakriti Vikritibhir, Anu, Savanam, Chaturhotra Vidina. With great faith, King Bharata performed various kinds of sacrifice. Does everybody know what the new rule is? What's the new rule? Masks on inside. Yeah. In fact, that's our rule in any case. Before the new rule, it was already the old rule. So With great faith, King Bharata performed various kinds of sacrifice. He performed the sacrifices known as Agnihotra, Darsha, Purnamas, Chaturamasya, Pasu Yagya, wherein a horse is sacrificed, and Soma Yagya, wherein a kind of beverage is offered. Sometimes these sacrifices were performed completely and sometimes partially. In any case, in all the sacrifices, the regulations of Chaturhotra were strictly followed. In this way, Bharat Maharaj worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Animals like hogs and cows were offered in sacrifice to test the proper execution of the sacrifice. Otherwise, there was no purpose in killing the animal. Actually, the animal was offered in the sacrificial fire to get a rejuvenated life. Generally, an old animal was sacrificed in the fire and it would come out again in a youthful body. Some of the rituals, however, did not require animal sacrifice. In the present age, animal sacrifices are forbidden, as stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ashvamedham gavalambham sanyasam palapaitrikam devarena sutotpatim kalo pancha vivajayat. In this age of Kali, 5 acts are forbidden. The offering of a horse in sacrifice, the offering of a cow in sacrifice, the acceptance of the order of sannyas, the offering of oblations of flesh to the forefathers, and a man's begetting children in his brother's wife. From Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapter 17, text 164. Such sacrifices are impossible in this age, due to the scarcity of expert brahmanas or ritvija who are able to take the responsibility. In the absence of these, the Sankirtan Yagya is recommended. Yagyai Sankirtana Prayaya Yajanti Hi Sumedasaha. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 11:5-32. After all, sacrifices are executed to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yagyata karma. Such activities should be carried out for the Supreme Lord's pleasure. In this age of Kali, the Supreme Lord, in his incarnation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, should be worshipped with his associates by performance of Sankirtan Yagya. The congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. This process is accepted by intelligent men. Sumedasaha. Yagyai Sankirtan Prayaya Yajantihi Sumedasaha. The word Sumedasaha refers to intelligent men who possess very good brain substance. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahayam Tadati Swapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yad Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. Could somebody do me a favour and grab the first canto of the Bhagavatam for me, please? Thank you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Dira. 742, 743, 744. You know, with a good index in a book, you can very quickly go to Okay. So, Prabhupada says there are two types of people. One is the Kripa, and one is a Brahmana. The Kripa doesn't understand what the real purpose of life is. And the Brahmana understands, has knowledge of what the purpose of life is. In the current age, in the current setting, we find that most people are kripana, right? Or, kripana. No mercy for others, and don't understand what the purpose of human existence or any existence is for. And this is why it's recommended, this is why it's essential that we have a Brahminical culture in society. The business of the Kshatriyas is to ensure that there are Brahmanas. The Brahmanas can advise and lead, guide and advise people as to what the real purpose of life is. And is one of the reasons why Srila Prabhupada went to so much effort to translate the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad-Gita, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita and other books into English, so that people could take advantage of their human form. So, Srila Prabhupada's mission, one of his missions, was to establish a Brahminical class that could advise people as to what the real purpose of life is. Instead of being a Kripana, they should become a Brahmana. This is the purpose of the Varnashram system. And to elevate people, the general populace, from a base animal-like culture to a civilized human culture where the focus is on yajna, sacrifice. In the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna explains that the real purpose of life is to perform yajna. Yajnatat kamano nyatra. The purpose of the human form of life is to perform sacrifice for the pleasure of Vishnu. As one of the names of Vishnu is yajna. So, in the animal-centric or the aham-mameti consciousness, or in this age very much dollars and cents, pretty much. That's the consciousness, right? Money. Like today's the new year. But, really it's not a new year for us. The new year for us is Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, right? But this is the new year for the dollars and cents men, right? And so, of course, we acknowledge the new year and the holiday season, if you like. But it's the holidays really of the materialistic men. But of course, not that we're ignorant of these things or that we disregard these things. We have to take them into account. But the real purpose of our existence is this performance of yajna, sacrifice, wherein everything, and this is the vision of a Brahmana, is that everything ultimately belongs to God, right? What is it? The peace formula. What's that? 5:29. What's that verse? Bhaktaram jagya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suridam sarva bhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati. So Krishna explains in the Bhagavad-Gita, and in the Bhagavad-Gita we've got the ABCs of a proper understanding of life, the basics. And so the first appreciation is, or the first understanding is, that everything belongs to God. Right? Everything belongs to Krishna and should be used appropriately, accordingly, with that understanding. So this is the Brahminical culture. Whereas the Kripana, he thinks, from the material perspective, that it's mine. And of course, the spiritual culture doesn't ignore the fact, isavasyam idam sarvam. Everything belongs to the Supreme Controller. But of course, at the same time, we're all given an allowance, we're all given a quota as our own, and it can be used appropriately by ourselves for our purposes, but always with an underlying concept or an underlying understanding that ultimately everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And whilst I have some freedom of choice, still our actions and activities have to be done within that context. And that's part of sacrifice. Although really, we're not sacrificing anything because it doesn't belong to us in any case. Right? But we need to sacrifice that misunderstanding of identity and that misunderstanding of ownership. Right? Ownership. The proper understanding of ownership is, this is given to me as my quota, but I respect and honour the fact that it belongs originally, or it comes from the original owner, that's Krishna. And that the performance of activities should be done with that thought foremost in our minds. That the facility, the ingredients of material nature that ultimately come from Krishna. None of us can create any of these things. They're given to us by the arrangement of the laws of nature, but we need to understand who's the lawmaker and who's ultimately the proprietor. And work then with our own individuality, but in that relationship, in that context. And that's why the Brahminical culture is so essential in society, to remind people of their real purpose. Because in the modern age or in the current age, people don't want to be reminded, or sometimes are reluctant to be reminded. But if dealt with properly, if dealt with in a mature and sensible way, they can be reminded of their real purpose. And that's really the only way to achieve peace. That's really the message of that verse 529. Gyat va mam shantim richati. One can become peaceful and satisfied and happy effectively by working in that context. Otherwise, just working for the purposes, for our selfish purposes, really doesn't bring satisfaction and happiness. Because there's always another desire that's going to push and pull us. So, there are injunctions within the Vedas that recommend sacrifices of many different types. And we see here in the life of Bharat Maharaj the performance of sacrifice. Agnihotra, Darsha, Purnamasa, Chaturamasya, Pasu Jagya. Completely performed and sometimes partially performed, but always following the regulations. Chatu hotra vidhina, by the vidhi, the rules, right? By the regulated principles of sacrifice directed by 4 kinds of priests. Chatu hotra vidhina. So not that you make it up, right? But rather the performance of sacrifice is governed by regulated principles, by rules. And so, the principle here is we also should, following in the footsteps of Maharaj Bharata, who's setting the example for everybody, we should also perform sacrifice. But, as Prabhupada points out, in the Kali Yuga, these sacrifices are prohibited. Right? It's still the principle of sacrifice, should be followed, but in the Kali Yuga, what is it? Ashvamedham, Gavalambam, interestingly, Sannyasam, Palapaitrikam, so even sannyas is not recommended in this day and age. Right? No horse sacrifice, no cow sacrifice. Devarena sutot patim. Kalo panchavivajayet. So no offerings of flesh to the forefathers and no begetting children in the brother's wife. And Prabhupada says here, such sacrifices are impossible in this age due to the scarcity of expert brahmanas or ritvija. Ritvija, the Ritvik. There are different types of brahmanas that perform different roles within the sacrifice. And one of them, I can't remember which one, was that there's Advaryu. I can't remember the four names, but one of them's job was basically just to keep an eye on what everybody else was doing in the yajna and making sure that it was all done properly. And if there was some discrepancy, then the priest would call a halt to everything and then rectify the situation, and then the yajna would continue on. So, the vidhi, the rules, are detailed. The performance of these yajnas is very detailed. And so Prabhupada mentions in many places that in the Kali Yuga, the performance of these yajnas is not possible because there's nobody who knows now these rules and regulations. And in history we've seen how the performance of these yajnas can very easily, very quickly degrade into the opposite. The killing of animals becomes organised slaughterhouse, right, over time. Right? So, even though King Bharata is an exemplar and he's performing these various types of sacrifice, we have to follow the spirit of what he's doing, not necessarily the details of what he's doing, because of the degradation of the age of Kali. But still sacrifice is required. And, the basic sacrifice that we're recommended. So no horse, Ashvamedha yajna, no Gavalamba, sacrifice of cows. But the recommended sacrifice is Jagyai Sankirtan Prayer Yajanti Hi Sumedha Saha. So the real purpose of these sacrifices is to satisfy the Lord and for His pleasure. And the recommended sacrifice in this day and age is the Sankirtan Yajna. And, this is the best method for us to make spiritual advancement. It's the best method to help others make spiritual advancement. So who'd like to take advantage of the best method of spiritual advancement? Please raise your hands. Okay, good. Didn't think I'd get anybody who'd not put their hand up. Sankirtan, although it's a challenge, it's a challenge to regularly take up this process. It's easy to stay at home and chant japa, although that might also be a challenge. Sit in one place and just chant Hare Krishna. It's not so easy. You see, when the devotees are sitting down chanting, they're shaking all over the place. We've got but then going out on the street and chanting Hare Krishna, to widely broadcast the Mahamantra is also it also has its challenges, but also gives us very quick access to the spiritual realm, and helps us make spiritual advancement. So in one sense it's very easy. The process is simple. But sometimes too simple for people to embrace fully, because in its simplicity, that simplicity covers the effectiveness, the power, the potency of the Mahamantra, and so people disregard the chanting of Hare Krishna as being really serious, right? Really serious. And we see that in the pastime of Lord Chaitanya in Varanasi, where Lord Chaitanya was being criticized by the Prakashananda Saraswati and the sannyasis of Varanasi were criticizing Lord Chaitanya. Why are you associating with these sentimentalists? People see the devotees and they're chanting Hare Krishna and they're dancing and showing enthusiasm and a religious fervour, and that's sometimes dismissed as being, not very significant. And so the Mayavadi sannyasis were saying to Lord Chaitanya, "You're a member of our group," because he was initiated as an Ekadanda sannyasi, and but you're hanging around with these sentimentalists just chanting. You should be studying the Vedas. This is the real purpose of the sannyasi. Not making a show of spirituality or religion. But they misunderstood what Lord Chaitanya was. They misunderstood the potency and the power of chanting Hare Krishna. And of course the devotees don't just chant Hare Krishna, we also study we have our, Lord Chaitanya is the greatest scholar. But he was demonstrating, he was showing by example what the real purpose of the Vedas is in the Kali Yuga. The performance of these other sacrifices is not possible in this day and age. the real yajna or sacrifice to be performed in the Kali Yuga is the Sankirtan yajna. And then from that comes all of the other realizations, or all of the purification that might come from all of these sacrifices recommended and performed in other ages. What is it? Kalo Tadhari, is it? Kalo Tadhari Kirtanat. What was achieved by meditation in the Krita Yuga, what was achieved by Jagya in Treta Yuga, what was achieved by deity worship in the Dwapara Yuga, is achieved in the Kali Yuga by Sankirtan. Isn't it? Yeah. And so it's beneficial for our purification. Right? It's the Yuga Dharma. So, we should be regularly going on Sankirtan. This is the Yuga Dharma. And that's for our benefit, but it'll also be for the benefit of everybody else. Just those who hear the sound of the Mahamantra are purified, even if they don't like it. They're subtly being influenced. And so this one performance of Sankirtan. Another performance recommended by Srila Prabhupada, established by Bhaktivedanta Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is there's the mridanga and the chanting of the holy name that echoes around the block. And then there's the Brihat Mridanga, which is the distribution of this literature, the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, the Bhagavad-Gita, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and all of the other books that Srila Prabhupada took such painstaking efforts to translate and then to publish for the benefit of everybody. So Prabhupada calls this the greater Sankirtan, in that, our chanting of Hare Krishna may be heard in the street by a few people, but the sound vibration is limited. Of course, it's also unlimited at the same time because it's a purely spiritual sound vibration. But a book can be distributed and then passed on, and so the message, the transcendental sound vibration, of which the book is the deity, right? The book is the deity and is worshipable. And how do we worship the book? How do we worship books? We read them. We read them. Krishna says, one worships me by his intelligence when they read the Bhagavad-Gita. Right? This is also Sankirtan, in one sense. Right? Reading is Sankirtan. Broadcasting the glories of the Lord. So, we have the chanting of Hare Krishna, very essential and very important. And we have the reading, the kirtan, if you like, of reading, hearing, reading is like subtle hearing of but then we also distribute that literature, the complete jagya, as we read it ourselves, so that we know what's going on. Prabhupada made the joke here, about how the devotees, he was playing at he was imitating a book distributor, distributing a book, and then also imitating the customer, and the customer was saying, "What's in the book? What's the book about?" And the devotee just saying, No, just take the book, take the book. Right? So Prabhupada wanted us to be able to distribute the books, but also explain what's in the books. right? So we can convince people, here's why you need to read the books. And of course, to demonstrate the behaviour of the brahmanas. This is really, sometimes the devotees are appreciated by their customers as good salespeople, right? Good salespeople. You're a good salesman. Why don't you come and sell something for me? But we're not salespeople. We may be salespeople, but we're not. We're brahmanas first, who may also be able to sell things. Multifaceted, multi-talented. But there's got to be that understanding, and that's this is the expertise of the devotees, is that they understand the purpose of life. That they understand the value of the teachings within Srila Prabhupada's books because they study them, and then they also put them into practice. But if we're studying Prabhupada's books and we're not, say, going on Sankirtan, it means that we kind of missed it, a little bit of information there, right? If you're reading Prabhupada's books but not actually going out on Sankirtan, then you missed an important verse or chapter or purport. We need to be regularly engaged in the Sankirtan Yajna or out on book distribution, but actually a combination of both. Because the more we broadcast and the more we practice or demonstrate the Sankirtan Yajna, the chanting of Hare Krishna, the more people will influence and purify. We'll purify ourselves, importantly, but more importantly, we'll improve the lives of others. Because when people hear the chanting of Hare Krishna, then they're inspired to find out more. The chanting of Hare Krishna has all of Krishna's potencies. What's that line in the Shikshastika? Nija Shava Shaktis. All Shakti, all potency, all Krishna's potency is in the holy name, right? So we've got to get it out there. Yeah. We have to show people. We have to demonstrate the performance of Yajna. Here's how to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this age. This is how to do it. Chant Hare Krishna. And then, by the performance of that sacrifice, people are imperceptibly purified. We're purified, they're purified. And they're then attracted. The Krishna is all attractive. That's what Krishna means. Right? So when we're chanting Hare Krishna, the impious become pious. Right? The impious become pious. And the pious, in due course of time, become attracted also to the chanting of Hare Krishna. So in that way, everybody makes spiritual advancement. How hard is that? It's not difficult at all. And yet we then are fulfilling the mission of the human form of life, which is to perform Sankirtan. In this age of Kali, the Supreme Lord, in his incarnation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, should be worshipped with his associates by performance of Sankirtan Jagya, the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And the real potency, the real power of that sacrifice is manifest in the public. You know, there are those who like to just stay at home in the temple and chant Hare Krishna, which is not bad. That's not bad, obviously. But the purpose for our chanting Hare Krishna in the temple is to take the chanting of Hare Krishna and distribute it outside. The purpose of our chanting in the temple is to purify ourselves so that we can then take the Maha Mantra to the masses. And so we see that in Lord Chaitanya's example, right? How does it go? What's the verse? Can't remember. I can remember the words Gora, Dvija Mani, right? Dvija Mani, the jewel of the twice born. It's a song, the song by Bhaktivedanta Thakur before Jeev Jago. What's Puraba Bhage? What is it? Is there a songbook over there? What is it? First. Yes, what's the first word? Udilo. Yeah, get up. Right? Is there a songbook over there? Grab me a songbook, please. Udilo aruna pura babage dvijamani gora amani jage. Right? Wake up. Wake up. Udilo, yeah, I want the word for word. Yeah. What is this? Is this an iPhone? No, it's a... Oh, yeah, okay. But I don't think that has a word for word in it, when I think about it. So anyway, Lord Chaitanya is setting the example as described by Bhaktivedanta Thakur. Oh, no, here it is. This is good. Udilo, got up. Aruna, Puraba Bhage, when the redness is in the sky on the eastern horizon. Right? Dvijamani, the jewel of the twice born. Gora, Lord Chaitanya, Amani Jage, immediately gets up. And what does he do? Bhakkata Samuha. He goes out with the bhaktas. Loya Sate. Gela Nagara Braje. Wandering around the villages and towns. Tatai Tatai Bhajalako. Right? Tatai. Gana Gana Tahe Jajera Roll. You know, the wampas. Right? Sounds like a steam train. A big Sankirtan party sounds like a steam train coming down the road. Dhala Dhala Sonara Anga. What is it? Yeah, roll. Janjera roll. Preme Dhala Dhala Sonara Anga. Charana Nupura Bhaje. He trembled in ecstatic love. Right? And his ankle bells jingled. We can all go on Harinam wearing ankle bells. Huh? That's when you shake your feet, then you get the sound. Powerful. Scary. You know, when you see the Sankirtan party and you're a demon, you start shaking out of fear. The potency of the Harinam. Mukunda Madhava Yadava Hari. Chanting the holy names. Bolena Bolo Re Vadana Bhori. Miche Nidavase Gelo Re Rati. Divasa Sarira Saje. Why do you spend your nights uselessly sleeping and your days decorating your bodies? Just fill your mouths with the vibration of the holy names. Mukunda Madhava Yadava Hari. Chant without offence. Right? This is Lord Chaitanya's example. This is the example that we should be following. Emana durlabha manava deho. You've got the human form of life, which is rarely achieved. Poyaki koro bhava na keho. So why don't you care for this gift? Ebe na bajile yashoda sutta charame podibe laje. If you do not serve the darling of Yashoda now, great sorrow awaits you at death. So, Lord Chaitanya's Udilo Aruna Purabhabhage. When the sun rises, he gets up and goes out on Sankirtan. Huh? What do? The sun rises and we roll over and go back to bed. Yeah. So, this is the Prabhupada says here, this is the process accepted by intelligent men, sumeda saha. So, who doesn't want to be an intelligent man? Please raise your hands. Good. Didn't think so. This is what we have to do. More of. Especially, for a householder, this may be difficult to do. Every morning, just get up and go on Sankirtan. And, we have our morning program, but at least we need, we are a preaching community. We study Prabhupada's books, but that's not all we do. And it's good to study, we should do that, for our purification and to build up the medha so that it becomes sumedha, good intelligence. We build our intelligence by studying the Bhagavad-Gita, by studying the Bhagavatam. But we shouldn't ignore the instruction to also go and do Sankirtan. That's really what we're here for. If we've studied Prabhupada's books, then we should be doing that. If we don't do that after studying Prabhupada's books, then have a guess what? Bhakti Shastri fail. Right? It's just a fail. I know Atul Krishna Prabhu used to comment that they were teaching devotees to the Bhakti Shastri, but then those devotees would go back to their place of their Prabhu Datta Desh, and then they wouldn't do anything, they wouldn't do any service. And so he felt, we've taught people, but they're not putting what we're teaching into action. This is a teacher who sees that their students aren't following the advice that they've given them is like, oh, what's the point of my teaching? I wasted my time. So, you know, we really do need, if we've understood the Bhagavad-Gita, what's the final instruction of the Bhagavad-Gita? What's the final instruction of the Bhagavad-Gita? Does anybody know? Raise your hands if you know. Okay, let's just try a test here. Who here has read the Bhagavad-Gita? Please raise your hands. Okay, if you haven't, better get cracking. You know, I remember when I used to go to one of my friends' place, and he had a Bhagavad, you know, those stands like that. He had a Bhagavad-Gita on it. I used to think, wow, look at that, how spiritual. I don't know whether he read it or not, but that's another thing. But that's it. We should be reading the Bhagavad-Gita. But then, okay, so all of those, raise your hands again if you've read the Bhagavad-Gita to the end. All of it? Yeah? Okay. So those devotees, you're now in for the prize. You're in it for the prize, whether you win it or not. Let's see. Okay. What's the final instruction in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita? It might not appear as an instruction, but subtly it is. What is it? If you think you know, raise your hands. What's that? That's the second to last instruction. The last instruction. No. Well, that is, yeah, maybe that is the last instruction, but no. There is no one more dear to me than he who distributes this knowledge of the Bhagavad-Gita to others. Like Prabhupada says, this is the final instruction of the Bhagavad-Gita. Right? Distribute the Bhagavad. In other words, read the Bhagavad-Gita, but then once you've read it, you should be giving it to others. Right? This is what a Brahmana does. I guess our excuse is we're less than Sudras, so, you know, we haven't. So this is, you know, this is really important for us, the Sankirtan Yajna. Chanting Hare Krishna and distributing that to others and giving the Bhagavad-Gita and other literature to others. Really important. Prabhupada emphasized these things. And a sacrifice. That is a real sacrifice because you have to you have to take the time, put yourself out, and then we go and, you know, give the holy name and the Bhagavad-Gita to others. And sometimes they don't want it. You know, they tell us, go and get a job. Or whatever it is that people say. Or, you know, the toughest thing, I was talking to Nanda Mandir the other day, he was doing book distribution, he said, still the same thing. The same challenge for book distributors. You know what it is? What's the biggest challenge for a book distributor? Huh? Yes, stop people. You know, we tend to think that we're great preachers. You know, that we're very advanced. But go out on book distribution and find out how advanced you are. Very humbling. People just ignore you. You know, around the temple everybody stops and listens to what you've got to say. Maybe. If you sit here, you know, you like to think that. You like to think that. actions, the activities of others tell you another story. But, to curb the any sense of false pride that we might have, great. If you want to feel humble, then go and do a day of Sankirtan, book distribution. See how you go. You'll come home feeling very humble. Or you may do very well, but you know, that wasn't me. That's Krishna who's working. Krishna uses us as an instrument. That's why, in one sense, it's easier to go out on the Sankirtan, with the Sankirtan party, because you can go out with a team of devotees. And, there's strength in numbers. And of course, the Harinam party with pure devotees chanting Hare Krishna together, it has potency, so there's a great strength comes from that activity. And the potency, you can feel the potency of the Maha Mantra because of the impact that it has on yourself. Immediately, susukam kartam avyayam. You immediately become happy. And you can see on the faces of the people who are hearing the Maha Mantra, you can see the change. We were in the city the other week, and there are people sitting in the crowd who are hearing the Maha Mantra and the rhythm of the kirtan, and they can't stop themselves from moving, right? And they're into it because they're looking at their mobile phone, they're talking to their friends, but they're moving up and down to the Sankirtan. And many of them, the youthful crowd will jump into the kirtan with the devotees and dance and even chant with the devotees. So this is, it's simple, but it's powerful. It's purifying for us and it's purifying for others. And so, this is a very practical application of Krishna consciousness. And it's a source of great encouragement, enthusiasm and strength for the devotees and deep realizations. From the performance of the Sankirtan Yajna comes realizations of all the things that we've read in Prabhupada's books and all the things that we've been told. We see it in action. And then you realise, well, this is really practical. What Prabhupada says is happening. What we're doing is what Lord Chaitanya instructed and also demonstrated himself. And from that performance of Sankirtan, whether it's book distribution or Harinam, we get deep spiritual insights and deep devotional strength and conviction comes from the performance of those activities. We're able to we transcend the material state of existence and are elevated into the spiritual world, the spiritual realm. We're no longer in the material world. And that's really the Yajna for the Kali Yuga. And that's what Maharaj Bharata is setting the example, the performance of Yajna. The performance of Yajna is the duty of every human being, the duty of every Brahmana. And why Srila Prabhupada wanted ISKCON? Because ISKCON is basically making that culture, establishing the Brahminical culture, that sets the example for the rest of the world to follow. And you know, that's an influence that ISKCON is gradually acquiring, or it's always had it, but gradually acquiring, and that potency or that power is appreciated in others, in other religious organisations, in the social and political spheres of life, where the devotees are establishing preaching communities. And it's important. The community devotees have to be preachers, and they have to be setting the example. But when people see the example, and you know, that requires selfless sacrifice. You know, not that we're looking for big positions because we're big preachers. Nadanam, najanam, nasundarim. What is it? No, we're not looking for followers. We're just looking for service. Followers may come, but the followers should be following somebody who's setting the right example. And, you know, looking for position, looking for influence, looking for power, or even looking to be learned. Oh, look how learned I am. But you don't have to be learned to be a devotee. You only need to know the Bhagavad-Gita. And the basics of the Bhagavad-Gita are enough. And in fact, actually, if one follows the process of bhakti without motivation, then automatically learning will come anyway. Right? Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji was not a well-educated, so-called well-educated person, right? But he was an outstanding practitioner and preacher of Krishna consciousness, because he was a purely motivated devotee. So, you know, yukta renunciation, what's the Sanskrit word for renunciation? Huh? Vairagya, thank you. Vairagya and knowledge, jnana, come automatically to a devotee. But it's self-realized, you know, it's self-realized. It's realized, not just parrot repetition of slokas or parrot repetition of the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad-Gita. But really, you know, and that's why Sankirtan is so important, because it's very purifying. You have to put yourself out and make the effort. Actually, eventually, what happens is one becomes enthusiastic to go on Sankirtan because it's so much fun anyway. But even that can be a trap, because then the devotees just want to go, oh, we want to go out and have fun. But it's not that either. That's a trap. We're actually here to serve. Automatically you'll have fun. But we're not going out to have fun. We're going out to serve. This is important. So purity is there. That's why we study Prabhupada's books. Not so we can show off how many verses we know, but so we can keep our hearts pure with the right motivation. Then with the right motivation, realizations will come. Automatically they'll come. That's the benefit, that's the beauty of Sankirtan and of book distribution, the distribution of transcendental knowledge. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions on any of these points? On this first day of January 2021. We think, 2021, it's going to be so much better. Well, forget about it. It's going to be more of the same. Somebody can say something, yes. If you wait long enough, somebody's got to say something. Mamahan.
Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad that he says, I think in the last line, one needs to have a good brain substance to take up this process.
Yes.
As an intelligent Kali Yuga, also we know from Bhagavatam that Manda Sumanda, is like people filled with very lazy and disturbed. This is how can we give to people who the intelligent people will take up to the Sankirtan movement. And the other aspect is, Prabhupada also mentioned in the middle of the purport that the yajna is not prescribed or not possible because of there is lack of expert brahmanas.
Yeah.
And you are saying that we need to become brahmanas, we need to do the Sankirtan. So in order to do the Sankirtan yajna, one has to be a qualified brahmana, not in sense of doing the ritualistic, in terms of going out for Sankirtan or anything. So one has to be qualified to do Sankirtan, is it one question? And then one, if qualified, is the result is possible because the Kali Yuga is filled with people with no good brain substance.
Yeah.
How do you understand?
Well, if you follow the Vaidhi Bhakti, right? The rules and regulations of the Bhakti yoga process, then automatically you'll be elevated to a Brahminical platform. Rising early, performing sacrifice, worshipping the deity, chanting japa, studying the Bhagavatam. These are all Brahminical activities, right? Actually, they're not Brahminical in one sense. They're purely transcendental activities. They're the activities of Sanatana Dharma, right? And the Sanatana Dharma is the eternal occupation of the soul, of the living entity, of the individual. And so, and those activities in and of themselves are Brahminical also, right? But and so anybody who takes them up, even if you're not by birth a brahmana, right? And it's arguable, if we looked at the occupations of the devotees in the room, we'd see that most of them are not brahmanas, right? But by embracing, and that's why the Varna and Ashram system is ultimately meant to elevate people to the point of a brahmana, right? You're not fixed by birth in your Varna, right? But it can be changed. And so therefore, one who follows the Vaidhi, or the rules and regulations of Bhakti, which means, rise early, take a bath, clean your teeth, clean your mouth, clean your body, clean clothes, then, what do? What's the first thing we do? What's the first thing we do in the morning, pretty much? Offer our obeisances to the spiritual master. So we're remembering our relationship with our spiritual master. We're worshipping the spiritual master. Just putting on tilak is Brahminical activity, spiritual activity. What does it do? What's the first rule of Krishna consciousness? What's the second rule? Okay, that's it. So all of these activities are designed to help us remember Krishna, and we do that right from the beginning of the day. Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana. Everybody does the same thing. But ultimately that puts us all on the spiritual platform, which is actually beyond Brahmana. Right? The reason why we initiate... Becoming a Brahmana is not the goal of life. Right? Although some people think, I'm a Brahmana. Feed me first. Right? Prabhupada says it's one of the most important activities of a Brahmana is to eat on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So those of us who join the Hare Krishna movement are quite happy to hear that. Especially, Prasadam. We weren't convinced by philosophy, although that attracted us, but we were convinced by pakoras. Cauliflower pakoras and tomato sauce. So the reason why we initiate Brahmanas is to confirm that a Vaishnava has Brahminical qualities. Actually, the Vaishnava is better than a Brahmana. Right? And because the devotees become fixed in his sadhana, then we initiate them as a Brahmana to recognize that in this Vaishnava are the qualities of a Brahmana. Right? And, that initiation is required to worship the deity. We really shouldn't, to be frank and honest, although we do encourage people to worship the deities, but strictly speaking, we shouldn't be worshipping the deity until we've been properly initiated. This is the Vaidhi, or this is the Vedic. These are the Vedic rules. So anyway, now how does somebody become Sumedasa, intelligent? Well, really just by associating with the devotees. That's good enough. Because what will happen when you associate with the devotees? What will they do? What will they tell you to do? Chant Hare Krishna, yeah. Like when I came to the temple, the first Sunday feast that I came to the temple, the devotee who was preaching to me said, do you know how to chant Hare Krishna? I said, yeah, I know how to chant Hare Krishna. Everybody knows how to chant Hare Krishna, don't they? He said, okay, well, you've got to chant 16 rounds. I was like, oh, okay. He said, 16 times 108 on the beads every day. I said, oh, okay, all right, I'll give it a go. And then the next week, Achincha Ripa and I came back to the Sunday feast, and the devotee asked us, are you chanting 16 rounds? We said, yep. He said, all right, now you've got to come to the morning program. So we said, and whatever the devotees told us, we took that seriously. It's like, yeah, you got to do, okay, righty-o, go to the morning program, sure. Right? So if you associate with the devotees, you'll become a devotee. They'll tell you what to do. I don't know if you noticed. The devotees will tell you, don't do that. What is it? Don't put the book on the floor. Well, first time I put the book on the floor, got exploded by a devotee. Every time I did something wrong, you keep your eye on everybody to see what they're doing, and then when they do something, you do it too, just in case they get on your case. So anyway, that's it. That's why the association of the devotees is so important, because by that association, Prabhupada says, like a jewel. A jewel reflects the light that it's exposed to. Or Prabhupada says, a really nice example that I read the other day, which is interesting, is Prabhupada says, just like if you sit next to a heater, what do you become? Hot. You become warm. Right? So when you associate with the devotees, we get their qualities. Of course, go away for 5 minutes and then something else, anything can happen. Right? But that's why we stay in association with the devotees, because gradually by that association, we become like them. Right? So, and that's why we need to go out on Harinam, right? Because people need association. And there's a certain bhava, there's a certain mood in the devotees when they're on Sankirtan that permeates the whole atmosphere and affects people. It's power. There's a Shakti in Sankirtan. Sankirtan Shakti. And when people get exposed to that, they feel it. It's like, whoa. And you see it sometimes. They hear the Sankirtan, the power of the Sankirtan. What do? And they run off. I don't know whether you see that. You don't see that very much these days. But certainly in the 70s and the 80s, we'd go out on Harinam and people would see us and hear it and feel the Sankirtan, and they just scream, shout, yell, swear at you. Little old lollies, what we call little old ladies who look harmless and sweet, but then expose them to the Sankirtan party and then all manner of filth comes out of their mouth. You think, whoa. So much for the little old lady, don't stand in her way, she'll kill you. So, so that's, if one stays in the association of the devotees, then one will change. One will have one's whole essential being adjusted. And then, keep people in that, get by that association, then one will then follow the Vaidhi. Vaidhi Bhakti and Bhagavat Bhakti. So in the association of the devotees, we'll feel the power of the kirtan, and then we'll be inspired to, act. And that's why our process, sits on, Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion, that's why our process sits on the two, like a railway train. You can't run a railway train on one track. What happens? Falls over. You need two tracks. So our track is Bhagavad Vidhi, which is our kirtan and our preaching, Sankirtan, and then the Vaidhi track is our deity worship. And the rising early in the morning, taking a bath, putting on fresh clothes, putting on a tilak, Guruvashtaka, worship of the spiritual master, worship of Lord Chaitanya, worship of Radha Krishna, worship of Jagannath, Balaram Subhadra. This is all the Vaidhi, all the rules and regulations. But it's purified, and it makes a Brahmana. Makes a Brahmana, ultimately. Well, not actually, it doesn't. It makes a Vaishnava. But incorporated within a Vaishnava, automatically comes Brahmana. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, and then automatically Sumedha Saha. Right? Intelligent persons. Very intelligent people. Even the simplest of devotees is a very deep experience. Right? So the person doesn't look very cultured or very sophisticated. Sometimes I would see the devotees and I think, I would think, how did I end up hanging around with guys like this? That's what you probably think, hanging around with me. How come I ended up with a guy like that? How come this guy? But then, and not particularly well educated, not even well spoken. But then, go to the Vyasa Puja ceremonies and hear the offerings of devotion to the spiritual master, and then you realise, wow, you know, where did that come from? Here's a person who externally not very polished, not very sophisticated, not very well educated, externally. But then when you hear that person speak, and you, through hearing them speak, understand their realizations, or get some understanding of the depth of that person's realization, then you think, whoa, this, and that's why, you know, we shouldn't be too judgmental about, you know, how many degrees a person has, you know, whether he's driving an Audi or a, you know, a Mercedes or whatever, you know, what suburb they live in, how many investment properties they've got. You know, we shouldn't be, the tendency is to think, oh, the brahmacharis, you know, these guys, they just couldn't make it. But they're probably more wealthy because of their spiritual learning, not because they haven't just bought their new investment property. The devotional qualifications have more value, spiritual realization and renunciation, because you know what, your investment property, how long is that going to last? How long is it going to last? Rajaraj? When you die, poof, gone. And maybe beforehand. Economic crash, you know, now nothing's worth anything, or you don't have a job and you lose it all. Right? Or you just get old. Right? You just get old, and then, you know, all of you running around like a young man, it all goes, poof, evaporates. Very interesting how the material energy works. Yeah. Okay, anything else? Any realizations?
Devotees are like magnets. All those who attract
Magnet. Yeah, they are. You know, I used to see the devotees and I thought, whoa, these guys, get mixed up with them, that's dangerous. I'll take everything. Krishna will take everything. It all belongs to him anyway. Right? I used to think, whoa, these guys are heavy dudes. But I was so attracted. I remember going to the temple and Guru Mandala Bhumi was there. And, you know, I'd want to talk about something mundane. He would just cut me off. I felt so small. If we were talking about Krishna, he would talk, but if I'd say something stupid, he just wouldn't say anything. He'd just look at me like, Pfft. I soon worked out there are some things you just don't say with the devotees unless you want to be exposed as a fool. What do they say? You can think something, but don't say it. You can think something and say it, but don't put it in writing. Right? So anyway, yeah. Okay, let's go through our Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Hare Krishna. And masks inside, certainly in the temple. Mm-hmm.